The bids are in, the gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. Yes, that's right. This is WineBid's podcast, all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just general discussion about wine at times. With me, as always, is Paul Walker. Paul is our wine auction expert and our wine expert. I would argue I'm Jeff McGurn from our marketing team. And this is our episode talking about U.S. wine coming to auction and all around the world. So basically everything other than France, because France has a lot to talk about and gets its own episode. And now we have an episode talking about U.S. wine. Let's run right into it. We have a lot of really interesting U.S. wine coming into auction this week. A ton of, and I'm just going to say at a really high level, I'm not going to mention any specific bottles. We have a ton of Sinner-Canaan, Bond, Insignia, Phelps, Caymus, including, actually, I'll just mention we have a bunch of like 1972 Caymus Zins coming in, which I think could actually be very interesting, although maybe those are over
72.
Yeah, 1970. I saw a bunch of 1972 Caymus Zins coming in. I want to run into one of my picks, which I thought was like super interesting. This is not one that I feel like we see come to auction a lot, or maybe we do, and I just don't notice it, but I feel like I would notice it. 2015 Heights. I like Heights as a producer. I know you don't like Heights because, well, Paul doesn't like any producer that is incorporated. Like if you've actually formed an LLC, and Paul will know. Yeah. You basically have to be a sole proprietorship for Paul to be interested.
Oh, God. Here
in
we
your
go.
wine.
Yeah, we've had many bottles of Heights that have been amazing, including, Jeff, the 74 Marthas, which is...
And so I would love to try the 74 Marthas. This one is the 2015.
After that little statement, then I'm not going to share it anymore.
He's not going to share any of his 74. He's got like a whole... Basically, Paul has just a cellar full of 1974 Martha's Vineyard Heights. So...
been drunk a long time ago.
You've probably had this. I'm like super fascinated with this. This is a 2015 Heights Grignolino,
Yeah.
which, my understanding is they've been making this since 1961. They have a little parcel of land dedicated to Grignolino, and this is 100% Grignolino. We've got it for $35. I find this to be fascinating. I'm very close to bidding on this because I'm really interested to try it. Have you tried the Grignolino? Is it worth it?
Yeah, I have. I don't think I've had the 15, but these can be challenging. They're not easy wines to enjoy if you don't know how they taste. I would know. I mean, the younger vintages, and I'd consider 15 still a young vintage for Napa-based red wines, but I don't know. It says Fun Light Red. James Suckling says it's a Fun Light Red, resembles more of a darker rosé with lemon and strawberry aromas, as well as hits of beeswax, light body, light tannins, and a fresh finish. Well, go for it, Jeff.
I will have to check the vintage charts to see how Napa Grignolino did in 2015 before I pull the trigger on any purchases, of course.
So let's make sure you do that before you pull the trigger.
So the second one I want to go into is this. There's a 2014 Cayus No Girls La Placentia Vineyard Grenache. We had a few bottles of Cayus come in. This, the No Girls Grenache, it's well regarded. It's getting some action. It already has a bid on it, $60. Have you had this one? And what are your thoughts on the Cayus Grenache?
Another wine that I haven't tasted for a few years, although let's see, are you looking at the 14s?
The 14s, yeah.
Yeah, because I think back when the label was, came out, I don't know how many years ago now this was a really big deal because they got consistently high scores, kind of like the other Cayuse wines in the lineup. But the No Girls, I don't, and again, like something where I don't remember or I don't know what differentiates, this label from, say, the more common yellow label wines, as far as vineyard sources, if they're blends of different vineyards, although the Grenache, I guess, is from a single source. I don't know about the Tempranillo. I don't know. I mean, it looks to me like they're actually pretty good deals for, and now they're 9 years old, right? So they've got some time. They've had some time to soften up. These things are pretty massive when they're young. So
yeah, the Tempranillo looked pretty interesting. And I think that's one that could certainly, with 9 years of age, could be doing great. Tempranillo is one of those grapes that you can lay down for a period of time. We had a bunch of Kistler coming into auction as well. I know, we got a lot of people who are interested in Kistler, a lot of Kistler Chardonnay, a lot of stuff sub $100. I think we'll see a lot on that. A ton of Saxum coming into auction too.
Yeah.
A lot of that. One thing that really stood out to me, we had a bunch of Duckhorn, but in particular, there's a 2011 Duckhorn Merlot, a 3-liter bottle, OWC.
Saw that.
I thought that one looked really cool. And if you like Duckhorn Merlot, and I actually enjoy Duckhorn Merlot myself on occasion.
Well, I don't know if you saw, but there's 3 palms from 12 and 14 in this week, which that's a great source for Merlot. That's one of the wines that actually made them famous. And they also have, or I should say, we have the 12 and 13 3 palms Cabernet, which you don't see as often. So I think it's pretty allocated from the winery. I'm sure you can get it if you're on the mailing list. I'm not sure you can just go to the winery and buy it. But yeah, no, I flagged the Rector Creek Cabernet 13, 4 of those at 55. There's 2 of the 12 3 palms Cab at 60, 1 of the 13 3 palms Cab at 55. And then the Merlot is actually quite a bit more expensive. Yeah, the 12 is 100 for the 12 3 palms, and the 14 is 150, which seems like a lot. I figured the 12 would go for more than the 14, but what do I know? So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, no, the 3-liter, that's a great party bottle. 11 was challenging, for Napa. So I think that's why it's relatively inexpensive, but still, that's a fun bottle. That'll taste good. They don't make bad wine.
Well, you're looking at basically $36 per 750 milliliter on that 3-liter. So
yeah, that's a good deal.
That's not a bad deal. I noticed we had a 2018 Dariouche Signature Viognier Blue Label. That one actually $30 already, getting action. I always love to see, American producers making Viognier. And I thought that one looks super interesting. And we have a bunch of other stuff coming to auction from Dariouche as well. And of course,
for an interesting white wine, actually, interesting segue, because I tasted this wine. There's a producer from way up on the mountain, I think it's up Mountain Theater, called Beta, made by a very sort of, let's say, against the grain winemaker. And interestingly, we have a bottle of the Chardonnay, and it's Chewy Vineyard, which is somewhere in Napa, but I'm not sure where, actually.
Moon Mountain District.
I better check. No, it's Moon Mountain from Sonoma. Anyway, Beta Cabernet is not, let's just say, it's sort of the antithesis to some of the very, expressive and full-bodied and fruit-forward wines from the Napa Valley. It's mountainous and tannic and expressive and complex and interesting. But this wine, I tasted this with some friends down the street, and it's so weird. It's super tropical and like super, super rich and super ripe. I was like, this is so bizarre to me that this wine, and we were all just kind of blown away. We're like, it doesn't fit with the profile of the winemaker. Let's just say that. And so anyway, it's fun to see. It's rare. It's got a couple bits on it. Looks like it's up to 86.
2 bits, yeah.
86 right now. So you got to hit it at 87 if you want it. But rare, fun, rich white wine from iconoclastic and against the grain winemaker. Let's see. Now, let me bring up some other interesting things too, because there's actually some really wild stuff from Oregon in this week. I know we were going to talk about U.S., California. Well, we'll get back to California wines too. There's some other things I want to talk about. But there is a wild selection of Chapter 24 vineyards wines. Very expensive and low production Pinot Noir. I have not seen these for a while. I've been following them in my favorites for a couple of years. But there's various vintages, 16, 17, all kinds of different vineyard designations and or just label designations. I'm not sure if they're all from single vineyards or not, but Hopewell Hills, Estate Red Dust Worden Hill Pinot Noir, the Point Pinot Noir, Highland Close Pinot Noir. And like I said, they're all between $75 and $130. So that was pretty interesting. I'm not super familiar with these wines, but they are collectible and quite rare. So not surprised in the prices. There's also a big batch, or relatively large batch, of Lingua Franca wines. Larry Stone, famous sommelier, I believe, founded this label either by himself or with partner. But these are very, very interesting wines, tasty, quite a bit less expensive than the Chapter 24s I just mentioned. But I think they're climbing in price as time goes by and they get more popular, anywhere between 40 or so for some of the Chardonnays to 70 and up for the Pinot Noir. And then the other wines there's another batch of Walter Scott in this week, which is always great. I love this stuff. The Ex Novo Chardonnay, everybody goes bonkers for. There's a bottle of the 14 at 65, which I think is pretty reasonable. I think it's actually quite a bit more from the winery. And then there's a couple bottles of the 18 Ex Novo Chardonnay for 80. So, and then various others, Freedom Hill Chardonnay 45. I thought that was fantastic last time I had it. And there's some Temperance Hill Pinot Noir and Cologne Vert Chardonnay as well. So my Northwest picks.
I was going to say, I know everybody gushes about Northwest Pinot Noir. I really like Northwest Chardonnay. Like I've been really,
you've got to try. If you haven't had the Walter Scotts, you've got to try them. They're phenomenal. And like I said, Freedom Hill is, let's just say not as sought after as the Ex Novo, but it's fantastic Chardonnay. I actually bought some from the winery because I heard about it and we didn't, none of it had popped up on the site. And so then, it doesn't come up that often and it does get bought pretty quickly.
I will definitely be buying some Freedom Hill. Heading back to California a bit, I wanted to note one of your perennial favorites, 2017 Turley Rattlesnake Ridge Petite Syrah. I know you love those Rattlesnake Ridge Petite Syrahs. We got 6 of those at $45. And then we have actually 3 lots. So depending on if you want to impress your friends, you can buy it for $45, $50, or $55 if you're a big spender and like that. Really,
or 60 actually. The 16 is at 60 now. So
the 16 is. I was just talking about the 17. The 16's at 60.
Oh, 17. Well, yeah, 17. Was a fire vintage, so that one is trickier. Although it got phenomenal scores. I've actually had some 17s not too long ago. Not from Turley, but from a couple other places up in the mountains, and they've been fantastic. So I think it's interesting because look, the 17 got a 97-point advocate score, and it's at a $45 reserve, and the 16 has a lower advocate score at a 60. So I think it's purely vintage speculation, people's concern about fire damage.
Look, to me, that's a phenomenal price for a bottle of Turley like that. Like, I love Turley. $45.
I would go for the 17 at 45 for sure. I don't think. I mean, you can't return it if you say you smell smoke in it.
Then it becomes more like Scotch. Right?
Like, well,
it's peaty.
We didn't cause that problem. So
right. It's peaty. I love to point this out. 04 Staglin Salas Cabernet Sauvignon, which I've had the Salas Cabernet, which is a fantastic cab, goes for above $100.
That's got a lot of time.
We have 7 of them for $50.
That's a steal.
For Staglin, that is a steal and a half.
Now, is the Salas like a second label or like younger vine fruit or something? Is it not as prolific as the estate? Because I mean, it is from their estate property, but I don't know what differentiates the Salas from the other wine.
I can tell you that the Salas in the past at retail usually goes for over $100, $120. Okay. So $50 in my mind is still a half and has got 19 years of age on it. So, and Staglin's great. They make great juice, which can really lay down for a while. I had a bottle of Salas. I can't remember what year it was, but I had a bottle of Salas that I'd laid down for maybe 10 years and it was outstanding. It was so good.
That's a deal for any Staglin wine. I mean, even the Chardonnay is probably more than that from the winery. So.
100. I saw that. I had to do the whole cartoon, like look at it twice, right? Like you're kidding me. $50 for a bottle of Staglin Cab, just in my mind, a ridiculous price. I'm not going to go through it, but we have a ton of Chimney Rock.
There's a lot of Chimney Rock.
A lot of, somebody really threw a lot of Chimney Rock ads, dumping a lot of Chimney Rock on the market. There is just an absolute glut of it coming in. This one was really interesting. 2018 Andremoli Grenache. This is not a producer I'm super familiar with, but apparently they make great stuff out of Santa Barbara, no less.
Yeah, really, really good wines. I think it was kind of a mailing list only, situation, and they were actually quite a bit harder to find than they are now. There's actually quite a bit of it on the site that's been rolling. There's some Magnums even as well. So there's a lot of it currently available. But yeah, the Grenache did pop up this week, but like I said, there's mags of Grenache as well, and Mourvedre and lots of other wines currently up. In that vein, actually, or let's just say kind of neck of the woods, did you see there's a bottle of 14 Domaine de la Côte Bloomsfield Pinot Noir in this week, which is always quite sought after. $190 reserve, which That's a big number for Central Coast Pinot Noir, but it's got a lot of history. So
I did see that, and I'm so glad that I procured a bunch of Domaine de la Côte for myself back when it was a little bit less expensive. I've got about a case of Domaine de la Côte, which, by the way, this is the wine that I believe it was in Psalm 3. They sort of redid the Judgment of Paris with Burgundy versus American Pinot Noir.
I don't think I've seen it.
And it was like Jancis Robinson and Fred Dame and maybe a couple of other people did a blind taste test, and they tasted Domaine de la Côte against Marquis d'Angeville.
Did they do the same vintage thing as well, or?
I can't remember if they did the same vintage thing, but I will say Domaine de la Côte won the blind tasting. This is going to raise the profile of Domaine de la Côte, so I went and bought some. But I've always been a fan of Rajat Harv's wines, and Domaine de la Côte has not disappointed. So I'm glad I got in on it when it was, a little bit cheaper than I think it is now. I think it's gone up since then. I noticed there was a 1992 Spring Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon that had some action.
92?
A 92. That one retails for a lot higher, and it already has some action. It was a 70, now it's up 71. And we have actually a lot of Spring Mountain coming into auction. There's a bunch of Spring Mountain. Another one that I had noticed, and this one just, was interesting, but it also sounded exhausting, was a 2018 Myriad Cellars 3 Twins Cabernet Sauvignon. And the reason it sounds exhausting is because I have one kid, and that's exhausting. I can't imagine having 3 sets of twins. That just sounds like an absolute nightmare to have to deal with. But the wine does get fantastic reviews.
Yeah, no, Mike Smith's wines are awesome. I'm a big fan. I think he's done a crazy good job in Napa and elsewhere too. He's made Pinot Noir and wines from outside of Napa. But yeah, the 3 Twins vineyard, it's surprising that the 18s don't go for more, because there's quite a variation in price between the different designations, right? Like there's the Empyrean from Dr. Crane, I believe, and a couple other, really high profile vineyard sites that go for quite a bit more. So I think this is a pretty good deal, because that's great stuff. That's for $75, that's a good reserve for a fantastic vintage, the 18. That's a great wine.
And we've got 2 of them, which is probably why it's already seeing some action. We were talking about this yesterday. 2015 Clos Duval, Hirondelle Vineyard, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Not cheap, man. That's more than the Myriad wine.
Yes. Well, and
that's a lot. I was surprised. It's a lot of money for Clos Duval, but hey.
No. What are you talking about? That Hirondelle, I bought that from the vineyard.
Oh, that's also 75. Excuse me. I was thinking of the other Clos Duval the Yetalil.
No, I'm talking about the Hirondelle. That Hirondelle, that's a steal and a half right there.
But look at the Yetalil, which I have no idea what that means, but it's from Stag's Leap, and the 19 is 175. So that was the one I was kind of surprised at. Also, I think new this week, I believe.
The Hirondelle, I bought a bottle of that at the vineyard, I want to say for it was over 100. That bottle retails for over 100. I'm certain of. In fact, I'm looking on their website right now. I think it's even allocated. I don't even see it on their website.
Interesting. Yeah, well, this other wine probably isn't either. Yes, a little. Anyway.
Oh, wait, no, here's the Hirondelle. Oh, sorry, 210. For the 2015 Hirondelle. You can get it on their website right now, library release, $210. Wow. Or you can, yeah. So I'm probably off Clos Duval's list now that I've mentioned you can get it cheaper on WineBid's. Sorry, Clos Duval family. Yeah. I noticed you probably hate these guys because they're not a single member LLC, but Peju Province, 2006 Peju, 50/50, $65. We got a ton of Peju coming into auction. I've had their wines in the past and I've actually really enjoyed Peju, but are they too corporate for you, Paul?
I don't know the wines, Jeff, so I can't say whether they're too corporate or not. I actually have had, I think it was I keep talking about Premier because it's coming up next week, actually. They made a 18 Premier blend. It might have actually even been something like 50/50, where it's 50 Cab, 50 Merlot or something. Is that what they're referring to in this? I have no idea.
I think so.
I tried it not too long ago. It was actually quite good. So that was the only Peju wine I had recently that was interesting. I did want to mention a little bit further south in the valley, there's a 2017 Ulysses Cabernet, which Ulysses does not come up very often. This is Oakville fruit, I believe. It's an Oakville source for the same proprietor as Dominus, and it's quite a bit rarer, at least on the auction side of things. But there's a bottle of the 17 at 115. And back up Valley, there's some Magnums of Vineyard 29, which I've always liked those wines, and they age quite well, especially in larger format. And they're far less than they cost at the winery. I would imagine the Magnums are really expensive.
Spent a lot of time selecting that vineyard name, like very creative group there over at Vineyard 29.
Yeah, it's a cool place. They're really cool. They generate their own power and everything. It's like a super sustainable property.
Was Vineyard 1 through 28 already trademarked?
I think it refers to the highway.
Okay.
Runs through town.
Can we do Vineyard 1?
So you're from down in the
No.
southern part of the state, so you got to get up here sometime. Get out of the sticks and come up to Napa.
Get out the sticks of Southern California.
Yeah, exactly.
San Diego.
Anyway, Mags of 94, 170, which is quite a good deal, I think, especially for such a phenomenal Napa vintage. 98, which is trickier Napa vintage, but the price reflects that. 95 for the mag. And then there's a 99 mag at 105. So those were, oh, you know what? Before I forget, since my list is just alphabetical and not geographically organized.
Yeah, don't forget.
There's a couple bottles of Irie wines from Oregon, which keep going up in price. They keep getting more and more popular, especially when they got some time on them. So there's a Reserve Pinot Noir 96 stuck out for 160, and then there is a state-grown Chardonnay 99 for 160. So a couple of very rare, very sought-after Oregon wines there. And then in addition, I think always gets underappreciated at auction is St. Innocent, another Willamette Valley producer. St. Innocent 03, Temperance Hill, same vineyard actually that we mentioned some Walter Scott earlier, Temperance Hill Pinot Noir. Well, there's St. Innocent Temperance Hill 03 for 45, which I think is quite reasonable. And those wines are excellent. They do age a long time. So I wanted to throw in those Northwest picks before we move back to California, because I've got some other Cabernet-based wines to mention, and then a couple other whites too that are really interesting. So
I'll mention 2013 L'Aventure Estate Cuvée we've got in auction. I love this wine. 2013 was a great year in Napa, although I know you're not as big of a fan of 2013 Napa wines as I am.
This was from Paso. Don't forget.
Oh, sorry. Is this Paso? My apologies. This is a Paso wine. My apologies.
Willow Creek District.
No, you're right. You're right. And the funny thing is, I've had this bottle, so I should know better.
You know, $80 for that? Well, it's got a bid. It's at 81 now.
$81. $80 for L'Aventure is great. There's a 94 Dolce Napa Valley Late Harvest 3 liter for $500.
That's a lot of sweet wine right there.
Yes. That is a ton
3 liter of Dolce?
A 3 liter from Dolce.
That is a lot.
I thought that one would be super interesting to break open. To everyone be like, it all has to be drank before anybody leaves, right? Like nobody leaves until this 3 liter is completely consumed.
Oh boy, that's rough. It needs a photo. We got to bark at Ryan for a picture.
We got to get a photo of that. I'll bet you that one's awesome. Can you make sure we get a photo of that?
I will. I'll go down the hall and bug him. He's just down the hall from me right now.
And then another one that I love Adaptation Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a producer.
Yeah, I noticed. Is this something from who? Tell me about it. It's like, aren't these the Gavin Getty people?
Plump Jack?
Yeah.
I believe it's part of the Plump Jack collection, I want to say. I have a bunch of adaptation.
Tea at 35, that seemed really reasonable. That seems cheap.
I think I paid more than that at retail when I bought mine. I still have a few 14s left, although I believe the label has changed over the years. So
but they haven't been making it. It doesn't go back like Plum Jack wines do. It doesn't go back that far, I don't think, as far as I know. But it's 17 for $35 for the 17. That seems quite reasonable.
Yeah. And I still have 3 of the 14s, and let me look what I paid here. I bought a case of them at retail and I paid $45 a bottle.
For the 14?
Yeah, but this was back in 2016. So obviously there's been a little bit of inflation since 2016, just a tad. And you can get a 2017 at 35. And,
That's a good deal.
tasting notes are to be believed 2017's outstanding. And even right now at retail, 2017's like $50. So $35 for two of those, I think is just a phenomenal deal for adaptation Cabernet Sauvignon. It's one that I love. We have a ton of Rutherford Hill coming into auction. Just a ton
That's
of
an
Rutherford Hill.
Old school name, old school place. And I don't think it exists anymore. I think it's been taken over by, I mean, maybe the brand still exists, but the vineyard, I think, is no longer around. And 2009, yeah, because they only go up, until 2012 or so?
Yes.
Yeah.
A million.
I think 2012 is the most recent vintage of these. Yeah, they're incredibly inexpensive. I don't know how great these wines are. I don't know how collectible they are, but
could be some interesting wines to drink from Rutherford Hill. What else do you got?
So there's some very rare stuff in this week that popped up. I don't believe we've made mention of it before. Kinsman Eads. There's some 16 on JS Sleeping Lady Cabernet. Very expensive. Stuff's at 400. And then there's 19, same vineyard, at 405. And then there's some 16 Kinsman Eads Redemptus. It's hard to say. I can't say it. Can't speak it. Redemptus. Redemptus. Anyway,
spit it out, Walker.
Whatever that is, 3 of those for 500. But no, this is like really serious stuff. It's a relatively young mailing list only wine. I believe they are quite expensive on the list itself. I think they're somewhere around 300, but always kind of interesting to see when, and if they hammer for, excess of $400 a piece and $500 for the unpronounceable 16 wine. Anyway, exciting to see those. We'll see how they do, see if they hammer this week. I haven't checked to see if they have any bids, but rare stuff from a couple making wine in Calistoga and a couple other places too. So they have another wine called Infantata, and it's 100% Merlot from Ecotone Vineyard way up on Howell Mountain. I actually got to taste that, the 18, a couple of weeks ago, last week actually, and it was very, very good. So I'm sure these Cabernets are fantastic. And I'm assuming that the Redemptus is also a Cabernet-based wine, but I'm not positive. So anyway, those are exciting, along the lines of other stuff we were talking about, like Ulysses. And
can I take us back to Rutherford Hill for just a second here? Because I just noticed something. Like I pulled it up.
Yeah, isn't this now like? It's a fancy property now.
I just noticed that we have a 1996 Rutherford Hill 25th anniversary Cabernet Sauvignon. Then we have a 1997 Rutherford Hill 23rd anniversary Cabernet Sauvignon. So somehow a year later, they were celebrating a 2-year less anniversary. I looked at the bottle. I think we were mistaken on the 1996 for the 25th anniversary. It's actually their 22nd anniversary. But here, I think I figured out why they went out of business, because I think it is the kiss of death when you celebrate off-year anniversaries. You really okay, yes, celebrate your anniversary every year, but if you're going to make a big deal out of it and do like a vow renewal or something, if you have your 13-year vow renewal or something like that, I think it's just the kiss of death right there. Like things are just not working out if you're doing off year. It's got to be like a marquee year. It has to end in a 5 or a 0 for you to go the test of time. But yeah, they were celebrating their 23rd. They're putting out like 23rd anniversary stuff. It does not work. Yeah. No, yeah, that's bad. That's bad. That's bad luck. That's bad luck right there.
I was wrong. I was confusing it with something else. It's owned by Turlotto family. I think that's what happened. It got bought by the Turlotto family, which they own a lot of things, a lot of property. And so anyway, I was thinking of something else. I thought maybe there was an old Rutherford Hill winery property that was then, renovated, but I'm sure that's probably what happened is Turlotto took it over and rebuilt it. But it looks actually beautiful from the pictures. I've never been up there, but yeah, they're not what we would call sort of typical auction fodder, because it would imagine goes for quite a bit less than they cost, out the door. Up the hill, by the way, there's a rare Pritchard Hill wine in this week too, 2012 Gandona Cabernet for 140. I don't see those come off too often, so that was kind of cool to see. Also, super interesting producer named Gallica, and there's not the Cabernet wine, but the Suzuri series Shake Ridge Ranch. And I'm not sure if I want to say it's like a Rhone red wine, but anyway, cool to see Gallica and Gandona and Kinsman Eads and things of that nature in this week. So yeah, I'm not sure what the Oh no, excuse me. Yeah, it is. The Gallica is it's actually from Amador, and it's 53% Syrah, 34% Grenache, 11% Mourvedre, and 2% Viognier. So this is cool stuff. It's far less than the Cabernet costs. The Cabernet is very, very expensive. Believe Celia Welch. No, excuse me. Rosemary Cakebread is the winemaker, and she's well known for doing lots of great stuff at Spotswood and worked in Bordeaux and things. So anyway, really cool one-off red wine there. I would not be surprised if it got grabbed up. A couple other random ones from the mountain too, if you wouldn't mind. There's 14 Howell Mountain Cabernet Franc, and this is Howell Mountain Vineyards. So it's the producer that's been up there for a long, long time. They're not expensive. They pop up every so often. They're not expensive, and they're great wines, and they last forever. Anyway, there's 3 bottles of the Franc. They've got bids at 36. There's a bottle of the 15 Cabernet at 50. I think those are great deals. Also, from right down near the Silverado Trail, just off the Yountville Crossroad, there's a Cap Chandy family State Lane Vineyard Grand Vin, 2008. A couple bottles of that for $285. Great wines. They age very well, so excited to see some of those. Sloan is a kind of in the vein of cult wine from, especially during the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s was a big deal. There's a bottle of the second label, the Asterix, 2 of those actually at $150. And then, and also 2 other caps, about to sneeze. 2 vintages of a wine made actually by a friend of ours here in Napa, Roy Piper. He has his own label. He's made wine for quite a few people in the Valley over the years, but he's also makes his own label called straight up Roy Piper Cabernet. 6 of the 14s for $140 and 5 of the 17s for $140. This is delicious wine, tiny production, really, really talented guy, makes great stuff. He also takes really awesome photos of the Valley. If you've ever seen his social media, it's really impressive. So anyway, really cool dude, really good wine, fun to see on the site. I'm going to send him a note and be like, hey, is this a good deal? I think it cost more on the mailing list. So I was on the mailing list, but then I think I got cut or something. I wasn't flipping it. I wasn't selling it, but hey, I don't know what happened.
You're especially going to get cut now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, now you'll never get on the mailing list. We're like, is it cheaper if I buy it here than from you? Right.
Yeah, Roy, is $140 a good deal for the 14?
Let's hop on a cruise ship and head over to the Mediterranean. There's just a few picks from Italy that I have, and then we'll kind of go around the rest of the world. There's some Gaia coming into auction, a bottle of Lange Tilden, 2001.
The same problem I was having with that.
Sorry, Tilden.
Not get it out of my mouth.
I have no idea. $260. About right for Gaia. 2000 Bruno Giacosa Barbaresco Reserva. This one $520. I mean, and then I would be remiss if I did not mention we've got an Etna Bianco coming into auction. I love Sicilian wine. I love Sicilian wines. I think Etna Biancos can be fantastic, and I thought this one, looks super, super duper interesting to me. This is 2016. Then there's a 1964 Luigi Bosca and Figli Barolo Reserva Special from 1964 for $95. And I was looking at the tasting notes. There are tasting notes from as recently as 2022 that says this wine is just kicking, that it's actually still very good. Well, Nebbiolo has the capabilities.
64 a good vintage for sure. So that's not who's the producer? I didn't see that wine.
Luigi Bosca and Figli.
Oh, okay. Reserva Speciale. Yeah, we need a photo of this too. I'll bark at Ryan to get a picture of this one up also.
Yeah. Anything you were looking at? Anything look particularly interesting?
Yeah, so I actually was a little caught off guard here because I forgot we were also going to talk about stuff that's not in the US, but I did want to mention really quickly, because it still is a little bit appropriate, is that there are some wines from this producer or brand called Eris. I don't know if you've heard of this, Jeff. It's a partnership between Reese and some growers in Italy, and they're actually planting and producing the same varieties in both California and also different parts of Italy. And so the one that's in this week is actually I thought it was maybe the Sonoma version, but no, it's the Sicilian Etna Bianco from Eris. And
that's the one that I pointed out.
Did you mention Eris? Is that who you said?
Yes, the Eris wines at Bianco Superior.
Oh, I wasn't even paying attention.
How dare you not pay attention to what I say?
So no, I wanted to tell you, do you know that they grow the same varieties also in Sonoma, and like they make a red wine, Sonoma Mountain, that's like they make Caricante in Sonoma, then they also have Caricante obviously in Italy. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. Well, excuse me for not hearing you say Eris. I would have.
I'm just a massive fan of Sicilian wine. Like I love.
You have to try these, and you have to try the California versions too. I keep wanting to like get them and then pair them, but I keep drinking them too quickly, and they don't come up that often. So they actually have a tasting room, I think, in Healdsburg, but I'm not sure you can buy the Italian versions from the tasting room. I gotta go check it out. Anyway, super cool.
I think the only solution is for WineBid to send us both to Sicily for the purposes of this podcast to try them in person.
Well, once they say that you can taste them in Healdsburg, it probably won't. That's probably not going to fly.
Italy's the only place.
I was super impressed. I've had the Caricante from Sonoma. I've had the Italian version. I've also had the Rosso, the kind of the red blend from Sonoma, which I thought was really good. It was I think quite a bit less expensive on the site versus from the winery. But yeah, 45 for Etna Bianco. Great scores too. I didn't even know they got all these big scores.
I feel like Sicilian wine has just sort of been this secret for a long time that like they make phenomenal wine in Sicily.
Oh yeah.
And what I really love here's what I love about Sicilian wine. I love like Mexican food and Thai food and seafood and sushi. And it's so much more versatile than like Napa Cabs and Bordeaux and just a lot of the other stuff that you'll drink that just doesn't seem to pair well across a lot of different styles of food. But in Southern Italy, especially, they're eating stuff that is, I think, a lot more akin to at least the type of stuff that I like to eat. And it goes well with spicier food, seafood, stuff that's got more acidity.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's head a little bit outside of Italy.
There's a couple things I want to mention before we do.
Please go for it.
I'm all over the place.
What else you got?
There are some other pretty wild wines from, well, not that wild, but there's some Movia, which is always interesting when we get Movia on the site. It doesn't come up. It's very interesting history, very colorful character who makes this wine. It's the 2008 Lunar at 50. Actually, also got some really big scores too, but it is considered maybe an orange wine. So, skin contact, interesting color. Although to me, it doesn't look like, he's known for making these like super wild,
So I'm going to pause you right there because I had this on my list. This is not Italian. Really? This is Slovenian wine.
That's right. He's not in Italy. He's in Slovenia. I'm sorry.
And
yeah.
Both Italians and Slovenians will tell you there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, no. I should have. Well, fine. Just over the border. You wanted to leave the country of Italy anyway, so I guess that's.
Yeah, I wanted to leave the country of Italy. I thought this one looked really cool.
You should try some of these. These are acquired tastes, and especially depending on the level of oxidation and the level of skin contact, et cetera, and what's going on there. But a former colleague actually from WineBid loves this stuff, and I think I mentioned that they make a sparkling wine that you actually disgorge yourself, which is really fun. So that's always cool. But yeah, look up the winery, look up the character. There's a lot of interesting stuff. So excuse me for saying Italy. I meant Slovenia.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Thank God no one listens to this, because otherwise we'd be in trouble.
Staying in, I don't know if exactly the same area, but not too far away. There was a 2013 Royal Tokai at auction that actually already has 2 bids on it from 60 to 64. I wanted to mention that. I do love Tokai. This one doesn't have a ton of age on it, but 10 years and $64 for Tokai. That's not crazy.
Not too bad.
Actually, I want to talk Spanish wine here for a second.
Rare bottles of Vega Sicilia.
A bunch of Vega Sicilia from the 40s and 50s. A bottle of 48 Vega Sicilia for $1,025. I thought that one was interesting. And
40, there's 40, 41, 48, 52. Yeah, they're like crazy old Vega Sicilia. Super rare wines. I don't know if we've ever seen these before, especially not this many in 1 week. So,
and the 40, some of these, they're tasting notes from as recently as a few years ago that say this stuff is still alive and kicking. But
yeah,
Vega Sicilia, it's got the power to stand the test of time, that stuff.
it does. Yeah.
There was also a 1954 Age Bodegas Unidas Rioja Fuenmayor for $210. And there were
Oh, really?
yeah,
54?
54 for 210. Wow. We have 3 of them, and they're tasting notes from as recently as 2017 that are saying it's actually still kicking.
Wow.
Unless it's just jumped off of a cliff in 6 years. That one also could be absolutely fantastic. And then I noticed there was an Alvaro Palacios.
Palacios? Yeah.
Palacios Finca Dofi for $65. This one, solid price for this bottle, and that's great juice in there.
Yeah, Finca Dofi's great. And 95 too. Remember when that wine was released, this big deal. But interesting. I wonder how that's drinking now, because that's got some time on it for sure. And that's the second label, I think. I think the third label is Terraces, but then there's one before that. Anyway, the other thing I noticed, I don't know if you saw, there's a bottle of Pingus, 12 Pingus no, 3 bottles actually.
I did.
$7.40 a piece. But then, don't forget, second label, always a better deal. There's also the Florida Pingus at 90. Now, Florida Pingus, by the way, was one of those wines where I think a lot of people lament who were buying wines in the 90s because it was so much less. I mean, granted, Pingus itself was so much less, but 90 does still seem like a lot to pay for a second label, but it's great stuff. So, and it's got 11, I can't do math, 11 years of age on it.
Yeah, that's why you got into wine. You're right. Like, stick to the wine business, okay? Let's keep you to the wine business, Paul. Let's go over to Germany here for a second. Some cool German stuff coming in. A 98 JJ Christoffel, Erben Erzinger, Würzgarten, Riesling Auslese Nummer 9. This one for $45. I think this one's really cool because you're looking at something that's got 25 years of age for $45. 25-year-old Auslese sold. I'll bet that's going to be fantastic. It may even have a bid on it that is my bid, because I was looking at that going, like, 25-year-old Auslese I will take all day long. Yeah,
there's Christoffel, there's Erzinger, Würzgarten, Auslese. Well, the Auslese that I'm looking at is at 46 now, right?
Yeah, I think I might have bid on it.
Okay.
That could be me. It was 45. And if I didn't bid on it, somebody that stuff's going to be fantastic. 1983 Von Havel Obermehler Hütte Riesling Auslese Nummer 4. This one for $45. This will be a great 40th birthday gift. Probably delicious.
Yeah.
Probably delicious right now, $45. And then there's also a 1983 Dr. Heinz Wagner Ochfener, Bockstein, Riesling Auslese Nummer 8. This one, we've got one of them, $30. And that surprisingly already has 3 bids on it.
Yeah, not surprising.
For $32. I'll bet you all those are just outstanding. And Auslese is going to last a long time.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Ticking right now.
Yeah, no problems there.
Anything else in Germany that caught your eye?
No, I didn't actually. I was too focused on all this California stuff that was in this week. There was one other interesting Alianico from Italy. I wanted to. There's 6 bottles, of the 18 Montevetrano. It's kind of like a eternal favorite. It's really, really good stuff, and always seems to be pretty reasonable. I think it's at 55, not a bad deal, and 6 bottles available. So it's not like you're going to get in a bidding war for just one bottle. Great, great, great Alianico. Really, really tasty wine. So that was one other Italian wine I wanted to mention before we shut it down. Unless, actually, there was one more thing going all the way over to another continent.
Are you going to South Africa?
No, actually Argentina.
Oh, hold on. I was going to mention South Africa. They have a bunch of Pinotage that came into auction this week.
So you lost me at Pinotage.
I know. I was like, if you're into, I know people do not like Pinotage.
I can't go there. Look, I love South African wines. There's amazing.
South Africa has great wines, but I've never had
Pinotage. That's where I draw the line. I can't do it. You got to try it.
Well, in case you love Pinotage, we have a bunch of. And by the way, one of them actually has a bid on it. So
it's acquired taste. I'm not mature enough to really get into it. But if you like burning rubber and plastic, then that's for you. But no, I was going to mention all the way onto another continent, South America, Cheval des Andes. It's a Cheval Blanc and Terraces de los Andes partnership. And I've never tasted these before. Naturally, they are not cheap, but there's a couple bottles in this week. There's the 16. Actually, yeah, there's 4 bottles of the 16 at 110. Looks like they might have bids. So anyway, interesting stuff there that doesn't come up very often. So
well,
I think that was about it.
That does it for us then, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. This has been WineBid's Finally Hammered. My name is Jeff McGurn. This is Paul Walker. And as always, happy bidding and cheers.
Happy bidding. Cheers.
And happy Valentine's Day.
That's right.